Purchasing a home in Jamaica can be very frustrating. It's not for the faint of heart. And especially if you are more accustomed to the US system. So whatever preconceived notions and ideas you have as to how a house should be purchased, and it's based on how you would purchase a property in the US, get it out of your mind when it's time for you to purchase a property in Jamaica. That will save you a lot of frustration if you don't have something to compare it to. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to be focusing on New York law and the way New York purchase, how property is purchased and sold in New York. All of the states have their own rules as to how properties are to be purchased and sold. So because I practice law in New York and Jamaica, I'm only going to be focusing on New York. Now, to go back to what I was saying, you need to understand that there are really big differences between between New York and Jamaica when purchasing a home. The first thing that you need to keep in mind is that in Jamaica, there's really no formal closing process. Unlike Jamaica, in New York, there's a closing date. And usually at the closing, you meet at the seller's attorney's office or the buyer's attorney's office, depending on what's inside of the contract. At the table, on the day of closing, you have the seller and their attorney, the buyer and their attorney, the title company, the bank's attorney. Sometimes a realtor may be there as well. And we all come together for about an hour to sign documents, checks are dispersed, keys are given out, everyone goes home. Congratulations to the new home buyer. That's not the case in Jamaica. There's no formal closing process. How it works in Jamaica is that when everything is done, everything is done. Your lawyer calls you, you come and you pick up your key, or the realtor calls you and you come and you pick up your key. And that process, I'm going to talk about how long that process could take, but that's essentially how it is. There's a lot of communication with the realtor and the lawyers and the banks, and ensuring documents and the mortgage are registered, the title is registered. So it's not the same way as you would expect it to happen. There's no formal closing. You're not coming to a table. You're just getting a phone call or an email saying, come pick up your keys. The next big difference that you need to keep in mind is that in New York, it is required that each party has an attorney. In Jamaica, that's not required. However, if you are not familiar with the process in Jamaica, I highly, highly recommend you get an attorney. Get an attorney in Jamaica to help represent you to the process, because it can be very complex and frustrating, and you should just have a counsel there to help you through the process. Third big difference is fees. Now in in New York, you may pay your attorney $2,000 to $4,000 for a deal, for the transaction, to represent you in a sale. Of course, there may be more fees depending on whether or not there had to be a probate or if there's any complication. But generally speaking, you're paying your lawyer a flat rate fee between $2,000 to $4,000, regardless of what the sales price is. In Jamaica, it's different. You are paying between 2% to 5% of the purchase price. So if you're coming to Jamaica and you're buying a property and you've decided to hire an attorney and they charge you 2% to 5%, they're not trying to steal from you because you're from the US. That is just the guidelines. That's just the amount that they are accustomed to charging, is between 2% to 5%. The next thing for you to keep in mind is the length of time for closing. In New York, closing generally happens between 45 days and 60 days if you're getting a mortgage, and if it's a cash deal, around 30 days. In Jamaica, the process is much longer. Now, if you're doing a cash deal, it could take about 30 days. I did a deal where it took around 30 days for it for everything to be finished, because it was a cash deal. Now, if you have a mortgage, if you're getting a mortgage from a bank, it could take months. It could take 6, 7, 8 months. And if there's complications with the survey, if there's complications with the title for the land, if the property was not registered, or if it's unclear as to the ownership of the land, then that can take much longer than the 6-7 months. So just be prepared if you have any complications like that to wait quite a few months for everything to be finalized. Next thing to keep in mind, if you're purchasing a property in Jamaica with a mortgage, unlike the US, unlike New York, there are age restrictions. Now in the US, there's generally speaking no discrimination based on age when it comes to getting a mortgage. In Jamaica, it's different. There's a maximum age that a bank will give you. Well, there's a maximum age limit. So I think it's 72. I think it's 72 is the age limit, and 75 if you are if you're self-employed. I'm gonna check those numbers. But if you are at those age, don't expect to get a mortgage. If you are 70 and you get a mortgage, you're gonna need 2 years you have to pay that off, or 4 years or 5 years, depending on whether or not you're self-employed or not. So just keep in mind that the older than you are, the shorter amount of time you may have to pay off that mortgage. Another note, another big difference or something you need to keep in mind, I'm not even sure this is a difference, but if you are a foreign person coming into Jamaica to buy, just expect that you're going to need to provide more documentation than if someone who is from Jamaica and they're local and they're working here. If you are working in the US, even if you live in Jamaica and you work remotely in the US, you may need to provide a lot more documents than a local person. Your US credit report, bank statements, pay stubs, and if you're self-employed, 24 months of bank statements, personal and business. If it's a business, you may need to get the documents, the originating documents that opened up your business. You may need to get a financial statement from your accountant as well. I urge you to contact the bank or banks that you're considering to get a mortgage from. Ask them what are the required documents needed, and start to get those together as soon as possible, and get as many of them as you can at the same time and submit them. And don't put your eggs in all baskets. If you are applying for a mortgage at Scotia, put in an application as well to JMMB, CIBC. Don't just throw all of your eggs in one basket. Put your application out to anyone, and whoever comes through first with the best rate, that's the one you should consider to go with. So those are some of the big differences that you need to keep in mind when you're buying a property in Jamaica. Yes, it can be frustrating, but you need to just first make sure that you have an attorney in Jamaica. Do not sign any contracts or do anything until you have an attorney in Jamaica. That's the first thing. That attorney will then be able to help ease you through that process, because it is frustrating and you need to have somebody who understands the process. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is that you need to just, any notions, any preconceived notions that you have about how things should work and shouldn't work, you're working with a different country with different sets of laws and different ways of doing things. So get that out of your mind completely. And it will be frustrating. It may be time consuming, but just hang in there and do your research. Contact your banks, get prepared, speak to the realtor, speak to your attorney, and just go through the process as easy as you can, and try not to get frustrated in the process.